Good morning. Good morning this Friday, where we continue our conversation in how to deal with difficult conversations. Today, I have this late night DJ voice because I have some kind of flu, but it's interesting because I want to mention about how voice it's important in when you are in a negotiation, when you are trying to calm down the heat of the room, of the emotions. So, using a lower, a deeper voice, is speaking slower, is also one of the tactics to make yourself heard, especially when there are too much going on in the room where people are shouting or talking over each other. And talking over each other, it's another aspect of conversations, of difficult conversations. And today I want to focus on I didn't write it, but I can write it now about violence. Let's put first silence and violence. So these are two behaviors that most people unconsciously can fall into when they get into a situation that make them uncomfortable, when they are getting to a difficult, a crucial, a challenging conversation. People tend to go into silence, retreat, or they can go into violence. And our job here, when we are working on dealing how to deal with difficult conversations, is to learn how to be aware of our own behavior in those situations under stress. So my question here to you would be, how my voice is going. How what is your first reaction instinctively without thinking too much? If you feel under stress, if you feel pressured, if you feel attacked, do you retreat or do you attack? Do you fight or do you flight? So in silence, there are three ways that you can identify where people, the three most common behaviors they might be doing when they retreat in silence. What exactly do they do? Let me get here for you the information. They can do masking, which is they will say things to pretending they would say certain things with not the intention of really saying it, just to not get involved in the discussion. For example, the person can say, "Oh no, this is not a big deal," when the person is really upset about something. So what is she is doing is to downplay her true feelings or opinions in with the intention, with the attempt to avoid conflict or confrontation. So what can you do when you perceive that someone is going to masking, saying something um, to avoid to get into this difficult conversation? You need to acknowledge it. You need to acknowledge that you have perceived that, and without any aggression, of course, and encourage the openness. For example, you can say something like, I sense there might be more to what you're saying. Could you share what you really think about this? You saying that it's not a big deal for you, but maybe you can rethink and you can share more about it. This is one of the options. The other tactic people use when they retreat, they go into silence, is avoidance. One of the examples of the new word now that we use, ghosting, is one of the examples. I'm so sorry. Ghosting, ignoring mails from someone you were upset rather than addressing, and giving feedback, anonymous feedback. I found this horrible, honestly. And if you are there listening to me, your leader, if you were leader, sign, sign your name, stand by what you say. It's really, it's you're not in the position to be giving feedback anonymous. I think every professional is shamed when you give feedback anonymous. If you are giving feedback, put your face there, put your name. And if you asked for giving feedback, if you're not asking for giving feedback, be careful, because unsolicited feedback can also generate a difficult conversation. So, going back to avoidance here, ignoring mails is one way of avoiding. Or a person is talking to you, you just pretend you're not listening, or even say, I don't want to talk about this. So, it's avoiding any type of communication or contact because you're feeling discomfort or you in a disagreement and you don't know how to deal with it. But this can damage the relationship and hinder the growth of trust and understanding. So it's if you don't deal with the situation a moment along the line, you're gonna have to deal with it because it only grows, it don't disappear. So what you can do that? You as the other person seeing the one avoiding, express understanding of their hesitation, gently encourage participation. For example, if it is an email, you can ask, you can resend an email again and say, listen, I sent an email the other day. I would really appreciate your feedback on that. I really appreciate your outcome on that. Or can we have a conversation? Can we have a chat? Because I need your opinion, I need your suggestion, I need your point of view in certain situation. And you can, if the situation is a really difficult, is a sensitive topic, you can address it by naming it. It's important to name things. You can say, for example, I know this is a might be a difficult topic to you. However, your input is crucial for us to get into a resolution. Let's find a way to discuss it, a way that you feel comfortable. So try to build, because building a safe space is core to be able to deal with any difficult conversation. And it's about building dialogue. And I mentioned this the other day that we need, we urge, we ought, all the adjectives, um, we have to go back to dialogue. We have to go back to learn how to be in dialogue because we are not in dialogue anymore. We live in this context here where I say something, you're listening, but you're not responding. Or most of the times, people are saying statements, say something, and then you read it or you listen to me, you type back, you say something else. This is not a dialogue. So this is also why it's becoming even more difficult now when we have person encounters and we have disagreement to deal with it, because we are losing this capacity of being in dialogue, of being in a conversation. So let's don't forget that. Let's bring back dialogue. I mean, this mission now, let's bring back dialogue to our interactions. The other tactic that people get into when they are retreating, they are getting into silent, is withdrawing, which is the name says by itself. That's going quiet or disengaging from a conversation. It's even like even going out of the room physically. So I don't want to get involved in this. Okay. What can you do? Well, if it's in a meeting and this person, it's important. We're bringing, um, create a safety space to build dialogue. You have to be attentive. You have to show empathy, and you have to be attentive that you have to create this space to encourage re-engagement. You can ask the other person a question to get the person back to the conversation, not a inquisitive question, not a intimidated question, not a blaming question. A question to get the person engaged to the conversation. Or even say something like, notice that you've been quiet. Your perspective matters to us. Is there something in your mind that you would like to share? Are you thinking about something? So you're also saying to the person that you are noticing, that the person is seeing. Another thing for you to be very aware of, write this down. Everybody, every human being, you, me, everybody else, have the intrinsic need to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. Everybody. So when the conversation gets challenging, difficult, we have to create safe space to build dialogue, and we have to make sure that the main players in this conflict, in this difficult situation, feel seen, heard, and understood. The next tactic, the opposite of silence, the opposite of retreating, is violence. And interesting enough, when I was doing my research about how to deal with difficult conversations, the ones who don't know yet, I've been researching this for over a year now, and now I recently just launched my program on this topic, and I'm coming here to you to share some of the discoveries that we're having in our private group and sharing some of the concepts, because I believe everybody faces difficult conversations, and I believe we need to improve our communication at all levels, everywhere. So the other aspect of the behavior that people face, they do unconsciously when they are facing difficult conversations or challenges, is violence. In violence, the word itself is violent, isn't it? You feel like, oh, that might be a really tough one. It's kind of, you really feel like attack, no, when you hear violence. So it's violence here in this context is about dominance. It's a verbal tactic aiming to coerce, control, or push others towards a specific viewpoint. So it shatters safety because it's imposing someone's meaning forceful into everybody else. And when I read this for the first time, it really made me to stop and think. I said, oh my God, so most times in our daily conversations, we can be violent without even noticing. Because if we were trying to make our point, if push our point forward, if we are passionate about something and want people really to get our point, we can be quite violent within this context. Because violence here means constantly interrupting people, or even um, saying, name calling, not in the not in the using bad words here, but making statements that diminish other people. Well, this we can see that's really violent. So the three forms of of violence, the three tactics of violence, is controlling, labeling, and attacking. So the controlling is about interruption to people and women out there. How many women says, "How can I do to be able to speak in a meeting because I'm always spoken over, or someone just shuts me down, I can or interrupts me, so I can never really give my express my ideas, my views." And this is a controlling type of communication that is considered violent. Mm? So another one is labeling. Labeling also quite violent. Saying, for example, in a sarcastic way to someone, "Okay, so you're the one that is the expert in XYZ, right?" So this is, or using stereotypes. Oh, typical Brazilian. You don't know how many times I've heard that. And I would like to know what's exactly typical Brazilian. You better say, "Oh, Tulia, you have a behavior that is not the most appropriate for this situation." But saying, typical Brazilian, you're not giving me enough information to correct myself, and you're also attacking me, and you're making me feel really irritated with you. Be careful. Labeling is called. So labeling basically simplifies complexity of individuals or of ideas into stereotype, making it easier to dismiss and diminish them. And of course, that hinders constructive dialogue. And in the other hand, that is very important, also promotes prejudice or biases. You know, the other aspect of of violence is attacking, insults, insulting someone's intelligence or competence during an argument. So, what can you do when someone is labeling you first? You can say directly. Like in my case, when I've heard, "Oh, typical Brazilian," I could say, could have said something like, "Let's avoid labeling stereotypes. Tell me exactly what you mean with that, and let's discuss it so I can grow with it." Mm? So, if it's in a meeting, you can say something in a more softer way. Say this same. Let's avoid name calling. Let's avoid pointing fingers. Let's avoid labels and stereotypes. Instead, let's discuss the specific and important points of this meeting and understand and respect each other's perspectives. And ask the person directly who is using labeling, what are your topics on the issue itself? Because also you will see that this person who is labeling, which is she or he is uncomfortable, and maybe by labeling is avoiding to say what they really think, or they feel threatened some way, or they feel um, that they're losing something. People are really afraid of losing something, losing what they have, losing their position, and they can become very aggressive. So by asking, what are your topics on the issue? What is really happening? What do you have behind? What's behind what you're saying? Share with us. You're opening this space for it. Of course, listen, every situation is a situation, and there are meetings that are very sensitive. So you really need to prepare yourself. And preparing yourself also includes this, not only thinking about the context of the meeting, what you were bringing as your arguments within the topic of the meeting, but there's also the condition of the meeting. So, is it a high stake meeting or if it is a low stake meeting? So, who are the individuals of this meeting? Is there someone there that usually use the attacking tactic to get away with their ideas? So, and all of this you have to have in your preparation. And when you do it, you can even prepare yourself. If someone says this will be my answer. Because when the situations are heated, when there's conflicts, when this is difficult, our brain doesn't work very clear. So we need to build tactics for ourselves to get back on track, to get back to our focus. So, which is what we talked last week. If you didn't see it, go back last week to my live last week. And the last one here, attacking. Very easy to understand. No verbal attacks. But you can do this. How can you deal with this? You can stop the person and say, "Excuse me, Jane. We value a constructive conversation. Let's refrain from personal attacks. Let's go back to the focus. Can you share your concerns about the matter without attacking others?" Here is your using a way to diminish, to break the attack, the reaction this a person Jane is using to get in a conversation through violence, because somehow she's upset, she's angry, or she is not prepared, she's feeling under threat. You are addressing directly what she's doing in a respectful way, as when you say, "Can you stop? Let's refrain from personal attacks and focus on the topic. Can you share your concerns about the matter without attacking others?" It's a very direct way, but very respectful, and helps to send the message to the person saying, "I'm listening, I'm seeing you, and I'm here to also to support you." So again, silence and violence are two ways that people react when they are facing difficult conversations, when they are and they're not really prepared. Is their inner reaction, there's their first reaction, and we need to learn how to address those, to prepare for those if they will happen in the meeting. Some people have the tendency to go towards one or towards the other one, or both. Depending on the situation, they retreat, or the other situation, they attack. And you, as the leader, have to be aware, have to prepare, have to have your own tactics in place in order to be observant when someone enters in one of those modes, that you're ready to address in the moment in order to bring the conversation back to dialogue. Because it's through dialogue that we will solve and deal with any difficult conversation. Good day to you, and have a wonderful weekend, and talk next week.